Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Phoenix, watching the stars through the main view screen. The ship was quiet except for the soft hum of the engines. Jake had been in space for 15 years, but he still found peace in the endless darkness filled with tiny points of light. The Phoenix was not a big ship. Other species in the galaxy had vessels that were 10 times larger. The Phoenix was only 300 meters long and carried a crew of 42 people. It was built for exploration, not for war. But Jake knew that sometimes exploration ships had to fight. Lieutenant Katie Walsh sat at the communication station. She had blonde hair tied back in a neat ponytail and blue eyes that missed nothing. Katie had been listening to radio signals from across the galaxy for the past 3 hours. Most of the signals were boring. Shipping reports, weather updates, and trade agreements. But then something changed. Katie's eyes went wide as she listened to her headphones. She pressed a few buttons on her control panel and turned to look at Jake. Her face was pale. "Captain," Katie said, "I think you need to hear this." Jake walked over to Katie's station. "What is it?" Katie pressed a button and the alien voices filled the bridge. The sounds were rough and harsh, like rocks grinding together. Jake recognized the language immediately. It was Zephyrian. The Zephyrians were a race of large reptiles who ruled over dozens of worlds. They had green scales, sharp teeth, and yellow eyes that looked like snake eyes. They were known for being cruel and aggressive. Most other species tried to avoid them. Katie had already run the alien speech through the translation computer. The words appeared on her screen in English. Jake read them and felt his blood turn cold. The message was from Admiral Krezeth, the leader of a large Zephyrian fleet. He was talking to his captains about their next target. They were going to attack New Denver. New Denver was a human colony world with 3 million people living on it. Most of them were farmers, scientists, and their families. They had no military defenses except for a few small patrol ships. Jake continued reading the translation. Admiral Krezeth was laughing as he described his plans. He called humans soft mammals who play with toys. He said his fleet of 200 warships would destroy New Denver in less than a day. "These pitiful creatures think they can stand against us," Admiral Krezeth said in the recording. "We will show the galaxy what happens to weak species who dare to spread beyond their home world." The other Zephyrian captains joined in the laughter. They made jokes about how easy it would be to kill humans. They talked about taking prisoners to sell as slaves. Jake felt anger building in his chest. He had visited New Denver 2 years ago. He remembered the children playing in the parks and the families working together in the fields. These people had done nothing wrong except try to build a better life. Chief Engineer Danny Cooper walked onto the bridge. Danny was a big man with dark skin and strong hands. He had been working in the engine room, but he could tell from Jake's face that something was wrong. "Captain?" Danny asked. Jake pointed at Katie's screen. "The Zephyrians are planning to attack New Denver. They have 200 ships." Danny read the message and frowned. "How long do we have?" Katie checked her calculations. "Based on their current position and speed, they will reach New Denver in 18 hours. Jake walked to his command chair and sat down. He pressed a button to contact Earth Command. After a few minutes, a voice answered. "This is Admiral Roberts at Earth Command. What is your status, Phoenix?" "Admiral, we have intercepted Zephyrian communications. They are planning to attack New Denver with a fleet of 200 ships. They will arrive in 18 hours. There was silence on the other end for a long moment. Then Admiral Roberts spoke again. "Phoenix, what is your current position?" Jake looked at the navigation display. "We are in the Kepler 442 system, approximately 6 hours from the Zephyrian fleet's current course. Phoenix, the nearest battle group, is 3 days away. I am ordering you to maintain your distance and observe only. Do not engage the enemy. That is a direct order." Jake stared at the communication panel. He understood why the Admiral had given that order. The Phoenix was just one small ship against 200 enemy vessels. It would be suicide to attack. But Jake also understood what would happen to New Denver. 3 million innocent people would die while he watched from a safe distance. Weapons specialist Lisa Barnes entered the bridge. Lisa was a small woman with red hair and green eyes. She was one of the best tactical officers in the human fleet. She had heard the conversation with Admiral Roberts. "Captain," Lisa said quietly, "we can't just let them massacre those people." Jake looked around the bridge at his crew. These people had served with him for 3 years. They had explored strange new worlds together. They had faced dangers together. They trusted him to make the right decisions. Navigator Paul Green spoke up from his station. "Captain, I can plot a course that would put us directly in their path. We could intercept them before they reach New Denver." Medical Officer Amy Turner had also arrived on the bridge. Amy was a doctor, not a soldier, but she understood what was at stake. "Those people on New Denver have families, Captain. Children." Jake stood up and walked to the view screen. He could see the stars, but he was thinking about the people on New Denver. He was thinking about his duty as a Starfleet officer. He was also thinking about his orders from Admiral Roberts. After a long minute, Jake turned back to his crew. "Katie, open a channel to all departments." Katie pressed a button. "Channel open, Captain." Jake's voice went out to every person on the Phoenix. "This is the captain. In 18 hours, the Zephyrians will attack New Denver. 3 million civilians will die unless someone stops them. The nearest human battle group is 3 days away." Jake paused and looked at his bridge crew. Each of them nodded at him. "We are going to intercept the Zephyrian fleet. I will not lie to you. We are 1 ship against 200. Our chances of survival are very small, but sometimes doing the right thing means accepting impossible odds." Jake pressed another button. "All departments, prepare for combat operations. We have 6 hours to get ready. Morrison out." The bridge was quiet for a moment. Then Danny Cooper smiled. "Well, Captain, it looks like we are going to make some aliens very angry." Lisa Barnes was already checking her weapon systems. "They think humans are weak. Let's show them how wrong they are." Jake sat back down in his command chair. The next few hours would determine whether the Phoenix crew would live or die. But Jake knew they had made the right choice. Sometimes one person had to stand up to protect others, even when the odds were impossible. The Phoenix began to change course toward the approaching enemy fleet. 6 hours later, the Phoenix dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge and stared at the view screen. What he saw made his stomach feel heavy. The Zephyrian fleet stretched across space like a dark cloud. There were so many ships that Jake could not count them all. The smallest enemy vessels were twice the size of the Phoenix. The largest ones looked like floating cities made of metal and weapons. Katie Walsh was scanning the enemy fleet with her sensors. "Captain, I count exactly 200 ships. Most of them are heavy cruisers and battleships. They have enough firepower to destroy a planet." Danny Cooper whistled softly. "I have seen big fleets before, but this is something else. They really want to make sure New Denver is completely destroyed." The enemy ships were moving in a perfect formation. Each vessel had green hull plating and sharp angles that made them look like giant metal predators. Red lights glowed along their sides where the weapon ports were located. Lisa Barnes was studying the tactical display. "Captain, their flagship is in the center of the formation. It is massive. I estimate it is 3,000 meters long." Jake nodded. "That flagship belonged to Admiral Krezeth. It was called the Apex Predator, and it carried enough weapons to fight 10 human ships at once." Suddenly, every screen on the Phoenix bridge lit up with an incoming communication. The face that appeared made several crew members step backward. Admiral Krezeth was huge, even for a Zephyrian. His scales were dark green with black stripes. His teeth were as long as human fingers and sharp as knives. His yellow eyes looked like they belonged to a giant snake. When Admiral Krezeth spoke, his voice was deep and rough. It sounded like rocks falling down a mountain. "Little human ship," the Admiral said. "You have made a very stupid mistake. You are one tiny vessel facing the greatest fleet in Zephyrian history." Jake stepped forward so the enemy admiral could see him clearly. "Admiral Krezeth, this is Captain Jake Morrison. You are in human space without permission. Turn your fleet around and go home." Admiral Krezeth threw back his head and made a sound like laughter, but much more frightening. Soon other Zephyrian voices joined in from across the fleet. 200 ships full of aliens were laughing at the Phoenix. "Human," Admiral Krezeth said when he stopped laughing. "I will give you 1 chance to surrender. Submit to me now. And I will let you watch when we destroy your colony world. I will even give you and your crew quick deaths afterward." Jake felt his hands form into fists. "Admiral, this is your final warning. Leave human space immediately or face the consequences." The laughter from the Zephyrian fleet became even louder. Admiral Krezeth was making choking sounds that Jake realized were meant to be laughter. "Consequences?" the Admiral said. "You are 40 humans in 1 small ship. We are 20,000 Zephyrian warriors and 200 warships. What consequences could you possibly threaten us with?" Other Zephyrian captains began speaking on the communication channel. They were making jokes about humans and betting on how quickly they could destroy the Phoenix. I bet 10 credits the human ship explodes in less than 30 seconds, one captain said. 20 credits says they try to run away, another captain replied. 50 credits says they surrender and beg for mercy, a third captain added. Admiral Krezith raised his clawed hand to quiet his captains. Humans are known for being soft and weak. Your species only fights when you have superior numbers. You have never won a battle when you were outnumbered. Jake stepped closer to the view screen. Admiral, you clearly do not know much about human history. Paul Green had been plotting a course through the enemy fleet. He looked up from his navigation station and nodded at Jake. Katie Walsh had been monitoring all Zephyrian communications. She had discovered something important. The enemy fleet was using old-style coordination systems. If their flagship was destroyed, the other ships would have trouble working together. Lisa Barnes had been charging the weapon systems. The Phoenix carried experimental quantum torpedoes that most aliens had never seen before. She was ready to give the Zephyrians a big surprise. Amy Turner had prepared the medical bay for casualties. She did not know if anyone would survive the coming battle, but she would be ready to help if they did. Danny Cooper had pushed the engines beyond their normal limits. The Phoenix would be faster and more agile than it had ever been before. Jake looked around at his crew. Every person on the bridge was ready to fight. They all knew they would probably die, but they were not afraid. Jake turned back to face Admiral Krezth. Admiral, you made 2 big mistakes today. First, you threatened innocent people. Second, you underestimated humans. Admiral Krezith stopped laughing. His yellow eyes narrowed. You cannot be serious, human. You are going to attack my entire fleet with one ship? Not just attack, Jake said calmly. I am going to destroy your fleet and send you running home like scared children. The communication channel exploded with angry Zephyrian voices. The aliens were furious that a human had insulted them. Admiral Krezth's face turned darker green with rage. You will regret those words, human. I will make sure you die slowly. Jake smiled. Admiral, there is something you should know about humans. When we are faced with impossible odds, we do not give up. We fight harder. Jake turned to Paul Green. Navigator, set course for the enemy flagship. Take us right through the middle of their formation. Paul Green's fingers flew over his controls. Course plotted, Captain. Jake sat down in his command chair. Katie, open a channel to all human colonies and Earth Command. Katie pressed several buttons. Channel open, Captain. Jake's voice was broadcast across human space. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Phoenix. We are about to engage a Zephyrian fleet of 200 ships. If we do not survive, remember that we chose to fight rather than watch innocent people die. Jake closed the channel and looked at his crew one more time. All stations, prepare for battle. Today we show the galaxy what humans are really made of. The view screen showed the massive Zephyrian fleet waiting ahead of them. Every enemy ship had powered up its weapons and shields. Lisa Barnes reported from her station. Weapons ready, Captain. Danny Cooper called from engineering. Engines at maximum power. Amy Turner spoke from medical. Ready for casualties, Captain. Katie Walsh checked her sensors. All enemy ships are targeting us, Captain. Paul Green looked up from navigation. Course locked in, Captain. We can begin our attack run whenever you give the order. Jake stared at the enemy fleet on the view screen. 200 ships against 1. Any reasonable person would say it was impossible to win. But Jake Morrison was not concerned with what was reasonable. He was concerned with what was right. All stations, Jake said. Begin attack run. Let's go teach some aliens about human stubbornness. The Phoenix moved forward toward the waiting enemy fleet. The small human ship looked like a tiny fish swimming toward a school of sharks, but appearances could be very deceiving. The Phoenix shot forward like a bullet toward the Zephyrian fleet. Jake Morrison watched the enemy ships grow larger on the view screen. The closest enemy vessels were now firing their weapons at the small human ship. Bright green energy beams and explosive missiles filled the space around the Phoenix. But the human ship was moving too fast and changing direction too often for the enemy. Gunners to hit it. Danny Cooper had redirected power from life support and other systems to make the engines run at maximum speed. The Phoenix was now moving faster than it was designed to move. The ship shook and rattled, but it kept flying. Danny, Jake called over the ship's intercom. How long can the engines handle this speed? Danny's voice came back from the engine room. Maybe 2 hours, Captain. After that, we will start having serious problems. Jake nodded. 2 hours would have to be enough. Lisa Barnes was at her weapons station watching the tactical display. The Phoenix was now close enough to the enemy fleet to begin attacking. Captain, we are in weapons range. Fire at will, Jake ordered. Lisa pressed several buttons on her control panel. 2 quantum torpedoes shot out from the Phoenix and flew toward the nearest Zephyrian ships. The aliens did not know what quantum torpedoes were. Their shields were designed to stop normal weapons, but quantum torpedoes could pass right through regular shields like they were not there. The first torpedo hit a Zephyrian heavy cruiser in the engine section. The ship exploded in a bright flash of light. Metal pieces flew in all directions. The second torpedo struck a Zephyrian battleship in the middle. The alien vessel broke in half and both pieces began spinning away into space. On the communication channels, Jake could hear Zephyrian voices shouting in confusion and fear. They did not understand how their ships had been destroyed so easily. Impossible. Admiral Krezth's voice roared over the radio. No weapon can penetrate our shields. Jake smiled. Lisa, fire 2 more torpedoes. Let's give the Admiral something else to think about. 2 more quantum torpedoes flew out from the Phoenix. A third enemy ship disappeared in an explosion. A fourth ship lost its weapon systems and began drifting helplessly. The Phoenix continued flying through the enemy formation. The small human ship moved between the large alien vessels like a fish swimming between underwater rocks. Paul Green was constantly changing the ship's course to avoid enemy weapons. The Zephyrian ships were so big that they had trouble turning quickly to follow the Phoenix. Paul, Jake said, take us past that group of cruisers on the left. I want to get closer to their flagship. Paul steered the Phoenix toward a group of 6 enemy ships. The alien vessels began firing at the human ship, but their weapons were too slow to hit the fast-moving target. As the Phoenix flew past the enemy cruisers, Lisa fired quantum torpedoes at each one. 4 of the 6 ships exploded. The other 2 were badly damaged and stopped fighting. Katie Walsh had been listening to enemy communications. Captain, they are trying to coordinate their attacks, but they are having problems. Their command system is breaking down. That was exactly what Jake had hoped would happen. The Zephyrians had never fought an enemy like the Phoenix before. They did not know how to deal with a small, fast ship that could destroy their vessel so easily. Jake had studied many battles throughout human history. He knew that large armies often had trouble fighting small, mobile opponents. The Zephyrians were learning this lesson the hard way. Katie, Jake said, start broadcasting on all enemy frequencies. Katie looked confused. What do you want to broadcast, Captain? Jake thought for a moment. Music, something with a strong beat. Katie smiled and pressed several buttons. Soon loud human rock music was playing on every Zephyrian communication channel. The heavy drums and electric guitars echoed through the enemy fleet. The aliens did not understand human music, but the loud, aggressive sounds made them nervous. Some Zephyrian captains began arguing with each other about what the music meant. The Phoenix continued its attack run. Lisa fired torpedo after torpedo at enemy ships. Each shot either destroyed an alien vessel or damaged it so badly that it could not fight back. After 30 minutes of battle, 15 Zephyrian ships had been destroyed, and 10 more were badly damaged. The Phoenix had not been hit once. Admiral Krezth was becoming desperate. His perfect fleet formation was falling apart. Ships were crashing into each other as they tried to turn and follow the fast human vessel. All ships, the Admiral shouted over the radio. Fire everything at the human ship. I don't care if you hit other Zephyrian vessels. That order was a big mistake. The panicked alien gunners began firing wildly in all directions. Many shots missed the Phoenix and hit other Zephyrian ships instead. Jake watched as 2 enemy battleships accidentally shot each other. Both ships were badly damaged and had to stop fighting. Captain, Amy Turner called from the medical bay. We have taken some minor hits but no serious injuries. The Phoenix had been hit by glancing blows from enemy weapons, but the ship's shields and armor had protected the crew. Danny Cooper's voice came over the intercom. Captain, the engines are holding up better than I expected. We can keep this speed for at least another hour. Jake was pleased. His crew was performing perfectly under impossible conditions. Lisa Barnes looked up from her weapons station. Captain, I'm reading something strange. One of the enemy ships is breaking away from the fleet. Jake looked at the tactical display. A Zephyrian heavy cruiser was moving away from the battle at high speed. "They are running away," Paul Green said with surprise. Jake was not surprised. The Zephyrians had expected an easy victory. Instead, they were watching a single human ship destroy their fleet piece by piece. Some of them were starting to panic. "Katie," Jake said. "Open a channel to the fleeing ship." Katie pressed a button. "Channel open, Captain." Jake's voice went out to the retreating enemy vessel. "Zephyrian ship, this is Captain Morrison. Tell your friends what you saw here today. Tell them what happens when someone threatens human civilians." The enemy ship did not reply, but it continued moving away from the battle as fast as possible. Admiral Krezeth was furious. "Cowards! Come back and fight!" But the fleeing ship did not return. Jake knew that the alien crew would spread word about the battle. Other species would learn that humans were not as weak as the Zephyrians had believed. The Phoenix had now been fighting for an hour. 25 enemy ships had been destroyed and 15 more were too damaged to fight. The remaining Zephyrian vessels were spread out and confused. Jake looked at the tactical display and saw Admiral Krezeth's flagship in the center of the remaining enemy ships. The apex predator was huge and heavily armed, but it was also surrounded by the wreckage of other alien vessels. "Paul," Jake said, "plot a course for the enemy flagship. It's time to end this battle." Paul Green's hands moved over his controls. "Course plotted, Captain." Jake stood up from his command chair. The next part of the battle would be the most dangerous. The Admiral's ship was the most powerful vessel in the Zephyrian fleet. "All stations," Jake announced. "Prepare for final attack run. We are going after their flagship." The Phoenix turned toward the apex predator and began accelerating to attack speed. The Phoenix flew toward Admiral Krezeth's flagship like an arrow aimed at the heart of the enemy fleet. The apex predator was 3,000 meters of weapons and armor, bristling with enough firepower to destroy a moon. Jake Morrison studied the massive enemy ship on his view screen. The flagship was surrounded by 30 of the largest remaining Zephyrian vessels. These were the Admiral's personal guard ships crewed by his most experienced warriors. "Captain," Lisa Barnes called from her weapons station, "the flagship has shields that are 3 times stronger than the other ships. Our quantum torpedoes might not penetrate them." Jake had expected this problem. The Admiral's ship would have the best defenses in the Zephyrian fleet. But Jake had been thinking about this moment since the battle began. "Danny," Jake said into the intercom, "I need you to do something dangerous. Can you overload our torpedo warheads?" Danny Cooper's voice came back from the engine room. "That is very risky, Captain. If we overload them too much, they might explode while they are still inside our ship. Can you do it safely?" There was a pause. "I can try, Captain. Give me 5 minutes." While Danny worked on the torpedoes, the Phoenix continued flying toward the flagship. The enemy guard ships began firing everything they had at the small human vessel. Paul Green steered the ship through a storm of energy beams and missiles. The Phoenix twisted and turned between the enemy shots like a dancer avoiding obstacles. But the Zephyrians were learning. They had been watching the Phoenix fight for over an hour. They were starting to predict where the human ship would move next. A green energy beam grazed the Phoenix's left side. The ship shook and sparks flew from control panels on the bridge. "We've been hit," Amy Turner reported from the medical bay. "Minor damage to the port shields." Jake gripped the arms of his command chair. The enemy was getting better at hitting them. The Phoenix would not be able to avoid damage much longer. Katie Walsh had been monitoring something interesting on her sensors. "Captain, I am detecting strange energy patterns from the flagship. I think they are using some kind of advanced computer system." Jake looked at Katie's readings. The energy patterns were very complex and seemed to be changing constantly. "It looks like artificial intelligence," Katie continued. "The flagship might be using AI to coordinate the attacks of all the remaining ships." That explained why the enemy was getting better at hitting the Phoenix. The Admiral's computer was learning from each attack and improving the targeting of every ship in the fleet. But Jake realized something that the Admiral had not considered. If the Zephyrian AI was coordinating all the attacks, then it was also creating a pattern that could be predicted. "Katie, can you analyze the AI's attack patterns?" Katie's fingers flew over her control panel. After 2 minutes, she looked up with excitement. "Yes, Captain." The AI adjusts its targeting every 30 seconds. "If we change our course at exactly the right moment, we can stay ahead of its calculations." Jake smiled. The Zephyrians thought their advanced AI would give them an advantage. Instead, it had given the Phoenix a way to beat them. "Paul, Coordinate with Katie. Change our course every 25 seconds, just before the AI can adapt. Paul Green nodded and began working with Katie to time their movements perfectly. The next part of the battle looked like a deadly dance. The Phoenix would fly in one direction for 25 seconds while enemy weapons fired at where the AI predicted it would be. Then the ship would suddenly change course just before the enemy shots arrived. The Zephyrians became frustrated as shot after shot missed the Phoenix by mere meters. Admiral Krest was shouting orders at his gunners, but the human ship seemed to know exactly where every weapon would fire. Danny Cooper's voice came over the intercom. "Captain, the modified torpedoes are ready, but I can only make 3 of them. After that, we will be out of torpedo warheads." 3 will have to be enough, Jake replied. The Phoenix was now very close to the flagship. Jake could see individual weapon ports and armor plates on the massive enemy ship. The apex predator looked like a metal mountain covered with guns. "Lisa," Jake said, "target the flagship's shield generators. If we can bring down their shields, the last torpedo can hit their command center." Lisa studied her tactical display. "I see 3 main shield generators on the flagship. They are heavily protected." Jake had been studying the enemy ship's design. Like most Zephyrian vessels, the apex predator had been built for fighting other large ships. The designers had not expected to face a small, fast attacker. "Paul, take us underneath the flagship. Most of their weapons can't aim downward." Paul steered the Phoenix under the massive enemy ship. The flagship's belly was less heavily armed than its sides and top. From this position, Lisa could target the shield generators without taking fire from most of the enemy weapons. She fired the first modified torpedo at the flagship's forward shield generator. The torpedo hit and exploded with 3 times the power of a normal warhead. The flagship's forward shields flickered and went out. Admiral Krezeth's voice roared over the communication channels. "Impossible. Our shields are the strongest in the galaxy." Lisa fired the second torpedo at the flagship's rear shield generator. Another explosion lit up space and the rear shields collapsed. "One more, Lisa," Jake said. "Make it count." Lisa targeted the flagship's main shield generator located in the center of the massive ship. This generator powered the shields that protected the command center where Admiral Krest was located. The third torpedo flew toward its target. Jake watched the missile streak through space, carrying the hopes of everyone on New Denver. The torpedo hit the main shield generator and exploded. The blast was so bright that the view screen automatically darkened to protect the crew's eyes. When the light faded, the flagship's shields were completely gone. "The apex predator was defenseless, Lisa," Jake said quietly. "Do we have any normal torpedoes left?" "Just one, Captain." Jake looked at the enemy flagship. Somewhere inside that ship, Admiral Krest was probably screaming at his crew. The Admiral had brought 200 ships to destroy a defenseless colony world. Now he was about to be defeated by a single human vessel. "Target their command center," Jake ordered. Lisa aimed carefully at the flagship's bridge. "Ready to fire, Captain." Jake thought about the families on New Denver. He thought about the Zephyrian admiral who had laughed about killing innocent people. He thought about all the other species who believed humans were weak. Fire. The last torpedo shot out from the Phoenix and flew directly toward the apex predator's command center. Admiral Krest and his bridge crew had just enough time to see death approaching before the missile struck. The explosion tore through the flagship's bridge and command sections. Secondary explosions followed as the torpedo's blast reached ammunition storage areas and fuel tanks. The mighty apex predator, pride of the Zephyrian fleet, began breaking apart. Huge pieces of the ship flew away in all directions. Emergency lights flickered along what remained of the hull. Jake watched the flagship die and felt no joy in the victory. He had not wanted to kill anyone, but sometimes good people had to fight to protect innocent lives. The remaining Zephyrian ships stopped firing. Their admiral was dead and their command ship was destroyed. Without orders, the alien crews did not know what to do. Katie Walsh was monitoring enemy communications. "Captain, the surviving ships are talking about retreating. They are asking each other who is in command now." Jake nodded. The Zephyrian fleet was finished as a fighting force. But the battle was not over yet. Jake wanted to make sure these aliens would never threaten human colonies again. "Open a channel to all enemy ships," Jake ordered. Katie pressed her controls. "Channel open, Captain." Jake's voice went out to every surviving Zephyrian vessel. What he said next would become legend throughout the galaxy. Jake Morrison's voice echoed through every surviving Zephyrian ship in the scattered fleet. His words were calm but carried the weight of absolute authority. "Attention all Zephyrian vessels. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Phoenix. Your admiral is dead. Your flagship is destroyed. Your invasion force has failed." Jake paused and looked around his bridge. His crew had performed miracles during the past 2 hours. Katie Walsh was monitoring enemy communications. Lisa Barnes was tracking the remaining hostile ships. Paul Green was plotting escape routes in case the battle resumed. Danny Cooper was keeping the overworked engines running. Amy Turner was ready to help anyone who needed medical attention. Jake continued his transmission to the enemy fleet. "You came here to murder 3 million innocent civilians. You called humans weak and soft. You laughed at our determination to protect our people." Through the view screen, Jake could see the wreckage of dozens of Zephyrian ships floating in space. Pieces of metal and debris drifted slowly among the surviving vessels. The apex predator was still breaking apart, with new explosions lighting up the darkness every few seconds. "You were wrong about humans," Jake said. "We do not start wars, but we will finish them. We do not seek to conquer other species, but we will defend ourselves and our allies." Katie Walsh was listening to Zephyrian communications on her headphones. She looked up at Jake with amazement. "Captain, they are calling you the ghost ship captain. They think the Phoenix must be crewed by spirits or demons." Jake almost smiled at that. The Phoenix crew were not spirits or demons. They were ordinary humans who had done extraordinary things when faced with impossible odds. One of the surviving Zephyrian captains found the courage to respond to Jake's transmission. His voice was shaky and filled with fear. "Human captain, we did not expect such resistance. Our information said your species was not warlike." "Your information was incomplete," Jake replied. "Humans are peaceful by choice, not by weakness. When you threaten our families and children, you discover what we are truly capable of." Jake looked at his tactical display. There were still over 60 enemy ships that could fight, but they were scattered and demoralized. Most of them were trying to reform into some kind of defensive formation, but without central command they were having trouble coordinating. "All Zephyrian ships," Jake continued, "you have one chance to survive this encounter. Turn around immediately and return to your own space. Never come back to human territory. Never threaten human colonies again." Another enemy captain spoke up. "How do we know you will not follow us and attack our worlds?" Jake considered the question carefully. "Because humans do not wage war against civilians. We fight only to defend innocent lives. Return to your people and tell them what happened here. Tell them that humans are not weak, but we are also not cruel. We will leave you alone if you leave us alone." There was a long silence as the Zephyrian captains discussed Jake's offer. Finally, the first captain who had spoken responded. We accept your terms, human captain. We will depart immediately." Jake nodded, though the aliens could not see him. "Katie, make sure we record their ships leaving our space. I want proof that they understood the message." Katie began recording the enemy fleet as they slowly turned away from the battle area. One by one, the Zephyrian ships began jumping to hyperspace. Within 10 minutes, only 12 enemy vessels remained. These 12 ships were the most damaged survivors. Their engines were too badly hurt to make hyperspace jumps. They would have to make repairs before they could leave. Jake made a decision that would be remembered throughout the galaxy. "Attention damaged Zephyrian vessels. Phoenix is transmitting repair procedures that will allow you to fix your hyperspace drives. Use this information to return home." Lisa Barnes looked shocked. "Captain, we are helping them escape?" Jake turned to face his weapons officer. "Lisa, we fought to protect innocent people, not to commit genocide. These aliens have learned their lesson. There is no need to kill them now." Over the next hour, the 12 damaged Zephyrian ships used the human repair procedures to fix their engines. One by one, they jumped to hyperspace and disappeared. When the last enemy ship was gone, Jake finally allowed himself to relax. The battle was over. New Denver was safe. Katie Walsh was monitoring human communication channels. "Captain, we are receiving messages from Earth Command, New Denver Colony, and dozens of other human worlds. They all want to know what happened." Jake sat down in his command chair and rubbed his tired eyes. "Katie, send a simple message to all human colonies and Earth Command. Mission successful. Enemy fleet destroyed or dispersed. New Denver is safe. Phoenix returning to base." Danny Cooper's voice came over the intercom. "Captain, I need to shut down the engines for repairs. We pushed them way beyond safe limits during the battle." "How long will repairs take?" Jake asked. "At least 8 hours, Captain. Maybe longer, Jake nodded. Do what you need to do, Danny. We are not in any hurry now. As the Phoenix drifted quietly in space, Jake looked out at the debris field that had once been a mighty enemy fleet. In just over 2 hours, one small human ship had defeated 200 alien warships. But Jake knew the real victory was not measured in destroyed ships. The real victory was that 3 million people on New Denver would wake up tomorrow morning safe with their families. Amy Turner came onto the bridge with a medical report. Captain, we have 3 crew members with minor injuries from when we took those hits. Everyone else is fine. No serious casualties, Jake was amazed. They had fought impossible odds and won with almost no losses. Paul Green looked up from his navigation station. Captain, I have been thinking about what we accomplished today. This will change everything. No alien species will underestimate humans again. Jake knew Paul was right. Word of the battle would spread throughout the galaxy. The Zephyrians would tell other species about the ghost ship that had destroyed their fleet. Humans would no longer be seen as weak or easy targets. Over the following weeks, reports reached Earth about alien reactions to the battle. The Zephyrian government officially apologized to humanity and promised never to attack human territory again. 3 other aggressive species canceled planned attacks on human colonies. The battle became known as the Phoenix Miracle. Military academies throughout human space began studying Jake's tactics. The phrase Phoenix Doctrine was used to describe the strategy of using speed and precision to defeat larger enemy forces. Jake Morrison was promoted to admiral and offered command of the largest battle fleet in human space. He declined the promotion and asked to remain captain of the Phoenix. He said he preferred exploration to commanding large fleets. The Phoenix itself was eventually retired and placed in the Smithsonian Museum of Space History on Earth. Millions of visitors came to see the small ship that had defeated an entire enemy fleet. A plaque beside the ship read, UES Phoenix in humanity's darkest hour, when evil threatened the innocent, 42 ordinary people chose to do extraordinary things. They proved that courage, determination, and the willingness to sacrifice for others can overcome any odds. Jake Morrison retired from Starfleet 10 years later and became a teacher at the Space Academy. When students asked him about the famous battle, he would always say the same thing. The Phoenix crew were not superheroes. We were just people who refused to stand by while innocent lives were threatened. Any human would have done the same thing in our situation. That is what makes our species special. Not our weapons or our technology, but our willingness to fight for what is right, even when the odds seem impossible. The legend of the Phoenix spread beyond human space. Other species began to understand that humans were not weak or soft. They learned that humanity's greatest strength was not in their ships or weapons, but in their determination to protect those who could not protect themselves. And throughout the galaxy, when young beings heard the story of Captain Jake Morrison and the Phoenix, they learned an important lesson. Sometimes one person, or one ship, really can make a difference in the universe.